Good afternoon, everybody. Stephen Howson from Full-Time Devils, and today I am joined by Sweeney and John. Sweeney from Brief Sport and John from Global Reds TV. The fresh from the Derby FA Cup victory, and we are looking ahead now to the league, to Stoke City. See if we can return the favour for them, where they took all 3 points of us, and see if it's our turn now to take those 3 points, because it's about time that we did, isn't it? Let's get straight into the mixer then. So the fringe players have been performing quite well of late. Against Derby, we saw Varela step up, and more people join the bandwagon that I'm driving for that boy Varela, or that fella Varela even. We've seen Lingard come in. His form's a little bit dipped of late, but we've also got Pereira, we've got Januzaj, we've got Cameron Borthwick-Jackson, we've got all of these fringe players that seem to be in and around the first team, and they seem to be doing, to be fair to them, a pretty damn good job. Sweeney, talk to me about the fringe players.
Do you know what I mean? At the minute, I'm going to take a little bit of a step back and look at last season. When we had that run of games, we had Spurs, Liverpool away, where Juan Mata scored, the 2 great goals. The City game as well at home, and there was a few forced changes. There was a few things a few times where players came in because Van Gaal had to change it, and we suddenly had a great run of games. And I get the feeling that this might happen a little bit. We've got some good fringe players. I know that you've been talking about Varela for a while. Borthwick-Jackson, dinosaur arms, has been nipping in and out the squad. And listen, he's not going to be, players like that don't come into the squad and suddenly hit it off straight away. That doesn't happen. But if they're forced into this side, or rather Van Gaal is forced into putting them into the side, I think we'll start to see some of the younger players really take on that role. And Varela had a great game against Derby. Yes, it's Derby. Yes, it's the Championship. Yes, it's the FA Cup. But you've still got to turn up and you've still got to produce. And I think Borthwick-Jackson the same. I think he had a great game. And I'd even look towards, I know he's not a fringe player because we spent a lot of money on him, but players like Martial start to come into that bracket where if you get a cluster of players, some from the academy, some that we've brought in that are young players, there's a good potential bond there and the chance to build a squad rather than just kind of find that we're hashing together players that don't really mix. If we can see a squad grow together and players like Varela, Borthwick-Jackson and Martial are that type of player, then there's some exciting prospects going forward, mate.
John, what do you reckon? We've got, as Adam's just mentioned there, a lot of players. I would include Memphis in this as well, where they have come in from abroad and this, that and the other, but they are of the very similar age. Can this team grow together, and can it grow, if it's allowed to, given the time, into a formidable force?
Yeah, no, I think Adam was spot on there. I think, it's just unfortunate that Louis van Gaal has to have this kind of tumultuous season, and, we're still in this transitional area and whatnot. But Louis van Gaal, he thinks in terms of statistical logic, and he just can't seem to take that kind of risks that he's taking with his defensive fringe players, with his offensive fringe players. And obviously, it also has to do with the fact that we were forced to give these defenders the start because, we've had injuries and whatnot. But if you're looking at players like you just mentioned, Lingard, Pereira, like Januzaj, had we been on a good run of form, had we not been knocked out of all the minor cups and challenges and whatnot, we would have seen these guys on there. We would have seen them get the game time they deserve and whatnot. But it just seems harder and harder for Louis van Gaal to actually take that risk, take that, I'm going to go for it, get this kid on there. It's harder for him to do that, and I kind of give him that benefit of a doubt. But all in all, I think, if we give them the chance, I think they need to take it, and I think they just need to be patient. I think, like Adam mentioned, we just need to give them the time, and they'll be able to, meld and mold together into that squad that we can actually see something happening, and I think you just need to be patient.
Well, the ideal scenario to bring through young players is when you're winning and you've got 15, 20 minutes and you look to the bench in the games, 2-3 goals ahead, and you're like, do you know what? We've got the crowd's on our side. The game's more than likely won. Bringing this kid on is not going to result in them scoring 3 goals and us losing the game. So we don't have that confidence. We don't have that luxury of being able to bring young players on when there is no pressure. We're having to go, look, kid, you're going to have to play, and you're going to have to play well, because these fans have got about 5 minutes before they see their arse royal, and it's all just going to come down crashing around your ears, especially at home.
But do you not think, though, that part of that is, given that, we are in this transition, John mentioned it, you've mentioned it there, that Van Gaal's job then is to make those lads feel like there's not as much pressure as there actually is. We know that it's tough at Manchester United. You know, we've not done it. We know it's not easy. So if these lads are coming in, whereas in the past managers were able to put them into a side, or Fergie was able to put them into a side that was playing well, so there's no pressure on them anyway, you can ease them in. Van Gaal, I think, has to do a job of making it easy for these players when they come into the side. Make them aware, particularly, I mean, I think John was spot on when he separated defensive and offensive players with Van Gaal. Because Vrella did have a great game, and yes, he was an offensive fullback, Borthwick Jackson the same. But you don't seem to see the same freedom given to the likes of Memphis, Januzaj, Lingard, Pereira. So actually, Van Gaal has to take a little bit of stick for the way that even, maybe not outwardly, he doesn't seem to get angry at players, but you never get the impression that he's willing to take the pressure off them and say, do you know what, if it doesn't work out and you do take a few risks and we suffer as a result, that's part of the learning process. Instead, it's right, you're out, someone else gets a go. And I just don't think that's the right way of going about it.
I think, actually, I would go one step further. I wouldn't just criticise him, I would say he is overly harsh on those defensive players. When it doesn't go right, just look at what happened with McNair. Whipped him off at half-time. There was no arm round the shoulder, it'll come right, or anything like that. It was like, nope, get your coat on, sit down, you ain't going back out. And we've seen him do that several times. He's done it with Memphis. He actually does come across as the guy that is, this is what you do, and if you don't do it, you don't play for me. Which is then what confuses me, as you get players that put in consistently poor performances or below par performances, such as Fellaini, and then he's rewarded by starting game after game after game after game. And I can't understand that for the life of me. Give me your thoughts on how Fellaini's still managing to maintain his place in our side. John?
I just don't understand how Fellaini is continuously getting the start, and I think it doesn't even matter if Louis van Gaal believes that Fellaini is part of his, philosophy or whatever he wants to label it. But as a footballer, I think Fellaini doesn't provide to me any sort of specific asset or a trait that as a footballer needs to have. Is he that box-to-box industrious kind of player? Is he good with techniques? Is he good at finishing? None of that. I think perhaps the only thing I could pinpoint specifically is probably his glue of a chest, and I think besides that, can't really figure out anything else. And personally, I think Louis van Gaal really opts for Fellaini because of that physical presence. I think he wants to have one of the midfielders out of a midfield three that poses some sort of a physical dominance in the pitch. But that doesn't work when the player that needs to assert that physical dominance is a liability.
What confuses me most is you give me something. I think John kind of was intimating on it there. You give me one instance or one piece of research that would tell you that Fellaini is worth a place in that side. Statistically, in terms of games, I think we've won 20% of the games that he's been involved. You look at the way that he plays, you can't even say that on the eye it looks as though he's having a great game. Research also would tell you that under David Moyes, when he played in that holding position, he was awful. And the few glimpses we have seen of him when he played at Everton and he was great, and occasionally last season when Van Gaal seemed to use him correctly, was when he's put up top as an option. So I don't understand why he's playing in the middle. At the end of the day, he's not comfortable on the ball. That is a fact. We can see that. It takes him 2 or 3 touches of the ball to really get it under control. And he's not a great distributor of it. So why he's playing in that role is absolutely beyond me. It's more of a hindrance than it's not even a case of he's not doing a great job. For me, he's adding negative to the midfield.
No, definitely. I think I agree with that. And like I just mentioned, he is a liability, and all he does is throw elbows and run around, reckless challenges and whatnot. And when you see his starting 11, when you see it on paper, it looks as if it's a 4-2-3-1 with a double pivot in terms of Schneiderlin and Fellaini, but he doesn't operate as a holding midfielder. He just kind of runs up and down, and it just looks useless. And if we're going to use our plan Z as our plan A and throw him up top, we don't need that. You know what I'm saying? It's just unnecessary to have him on there. There's no impetus for him to be able to go forward or defend. None of that.
Do we look to the transfer window now? We have hours left, essentially, don't we, in the transfer window? Do you see us bringing anybody in? Is there anyone you would like to bring in? Anything realistic about the transfer window, Sweeney?
Nothing. There's nothing realistic about Manchester United bringing someone in the transfer window. It could happen. We've seen it happen before. It is the transfer window. Deadline day does strange things to ordinarily sane people. But I can't see where you dip into the market. At the minute, our biggest problem isn't personnel. Have we got the strongest squad, or have we got as strong a squad as we need? No, absolutely not. But is that the problem? No, it isn't. You look at Spurs. Have we got a worse squad than Spurs? It's not worse. It might be on a par, but it's definitely not worse. You look at, Everton and the same, and we need to be showing that we can do something with players that we've got first before we try and integrate other players into the side. Martial needs to grow. Rooney needs to continue this form that he's showing now. Herrera needs more minutes. We need to see this side grow as a side first before we can integrate anyone else. Not to mention the fact that I still don't think that we could attract the players that we need anyway.
Fair enough, John.
No, I think Adam was spot on there. I think, regardless of how many hours is left, I don't see anybody. I don't see us bringing anybody, or do we even see the need for it at the current stage that we're in? In the market, there's not really anybody available as well. And in remembrance of Vida retiring, the Nemanja Vidic retiring, he was a January buy. So was Patrice Evra. But a lot of people on Twitter and social media outlets are saying that they were comparing that kind of transfer move, saying, we can buy players like Vida's quality, we could buy players like Evra's quality. Not necessarily. And in the current status that we're in, I think, like Adam mentioned, I think spot on there. I think we can just kind of work with what we have. It's not a personnel problem. It's more of a management problem, whether it be formational issues, giving the players freedom, whatever it is. I think that it's more of an internal issue that needs to be resolved first.
I think if you take away the injuries, we do have a fantastic squad. The problem is we have a squad that is massively injury prone. So I'm going to disagree with you both that in terms of I think we should try and bring somebody in. And I don't have a key position. The only position I think we're all right is goalkeeper. I think we're fine there with about 15 goalkeepers on the bench and in the stand. So I think we're all right for goalkeeper. But if you brought in anyone else for any other position, I think that would add to the squad and certainly help us for the final few months of the season. If you brought in another defender that could play centrally or either side, that would be a bonus. If you brought in a midfielder that was able to do box-to-box or sit alongside Schneiderlin or just cover for whenever, so we don't have to start Fellaini week in, week out, or if you bought a centre-forward or even a winger, I think a winger's the more pressing need, someone who's an out-and-out winger, because we're playing Mata on the wing, we're playing Marshall on the wing, and we've seen against Derby, at least, when you play a left-back at left-back and a right-back at right-back, and those two have the standout performances of the game alongside Martial, that you play players in the right position, and guess what happens? They perform. So I would just like to see us almost just turn a little bit at the top and start playing players in the right positions. And I do think in the transfer window, if there's someone available, and I don't think there is, and I don't think we'll get someone, but I do hope that we do put our hand in our pocket and we do manage to find someone just to add to the squad, almost as a bit of a lift to the fans as well. Like, we're not just cruising through this doing nothing about what's happening, but that, yeah, we are looking to build and we're looking to fix this. And I think a transfer, while it might only be a plaster over a cut, would solve a lot of problems in people's heads, I think. Which takes us on to, rather clunkily, the opposition.
Nice segue.
As soon as the transfer window closes, we are playing Stoke at Old Trafford. Talk to us about Stoke. Obviously, we went to the Britannia not long ago, and I thought they was fortunate to come away with the result they got. They was certainly the better side, but some of the goals that they scored, I don't think they're scoring goals like that. I don't think you're going to see a goal like Artonovic's again. And the mistake from Memphis, how often is that going to happen? Not very, I wouldn't have thought. So if for a little bit more clinical up front, which we've shown of late, can we overturn these? And talk to me about the strengths and weaknesses of our opposition, please, Sweeney.
Well, look, I mean, you've mentioned Arnautovic already, but I mean, I think Charlie Adams out, is he not? Looks like Shawcross might be out as well, potentially. But I look at that side at the minute, and Mark Hughes is doing amazing things. I know that, Howson, you've mentioned him or tipped him before to potentially, or at least put his name in the hat for a potential United job in the future. But I think he's doing great things at Stoke. And actually, there's got to be a little bit of context. Yes, we were awful in that particular game at the Britannia, but they've produced some great results. They've got a draw against Arsenal. They've beat Manchester City. They've beaten Chelsea. They've shown some unbelievable form at home. And they've got a great side. Bojan is excellent. Shaqiri can do magical things with the ball. And they're a solid unit as well. I think Shawcross missing is a big blow, but they're still a solid unit. I think that the thing for United is we need to start taking a few more risks. Ultimately, you look at the table now. We're in 5th. We're 5 points off Spurs. Is United finishing 5th? Realistically, it sounds on the face of it. Is it any worse than finishing 10th? Is finishing 10th any worse? I'm not really sure it is. The top 4 is crucial. And actually, we're at a stage now where being cautious might mean that you still finish 5th or 6th rather than finishing 10th. But if you take a risk and give yourself the opportunity against teams like Stoke, then you might actually start to get results that put you into that top 4 bracket. Because ultimately, this year is like nothing we've seen before in terms of how competitive all the sides are. And if we think that we can go into any of these games and play, even like, Fergie wouldn't have struggled necessarily in this league. He might have actually wiped up given how successful he was. However, he never had a situation where every single one of the 20 clubs were as competitive as they are now. So he could turn up to Old Trafford, to the Britannia, places like that, and try and just grind out a result and play okay, second, third gear. We need to now start turning up, particularly at home against sides like Stoke, and putting ourselves in a position. If we are 2-0 down at half time, is it really that much worse than being 0-0 and the game petering out and still losing it anyway? I think we need to start taking risks. Stoke are a tough side, but does it really matter anymore? We need results. Simple as that.
Agreed, John.
Yeah, no, I think he's spot on there. Once again, Adam, fantastic as usual. But what I'm trying to say is, Louis van Gaal hasn't been in any worse situation as a manager at Manchester United. I think now, like he's mentioned, there's no point in being careful. I think now is the time to take that risk, to go forward, just guns blazing. There's no need for us to hold back any longer. And I think last season, I think we had a good run of form towards the end of the season. I believe it was against Spurs that we finished the game first, and then we started taking on players like teams like Liverpool. And I think we had a major victories against the top 6 towards the end of the season. I think we can see that again as long as we just get that momentum going, get the strengths forward going forward. We do have the strength as opposed to last season. I think we can definitely kick on as long as we just give them that opportunity, give them that chance, and just let them do what they got to do. And in regards to the side against Stoke, I think I managed to watch a bit of the game against Leicester that they got romped, but they had a tough time trying to spread their play. Bojan wasn't on the side, Arnautovic wasn't on the side as well, and I think if we can, and Wood, like you mentioned, Shawcross was also out. So I think if we can just kind of get the forward momentum going, I think we could definitely cause some serious damage to Stoke.
I agree, and I think I always like to say there's two sides in a game of football, and people often just criticise United when they lose rather than look into what the other team has done right. I think in this instance, Manchester United, if we turn up and if we put it on them the way we've got the capabilities in our squad to do, then it shouldn't matter what Stoke come to Old Trafford to do, because
correct.
Mark Hughes, I did throw his name into the hat because I was just sick of talking about Pep Guardiola and Mourinho, and I thought there can't just be 2 options as a replacement manager of one of the biggest clubs in the world. I thought you have to look outside, and I don't like the option of Giggs. I think Solskjaer's achieved more as a manager and deserves that sort of option, but I don't want to get too carried away into the manager discussion because that's hours and hours and hours of debate. So I just said, let's just evaluate Mark Hughes and what he's done, and I think what he has done, he's overachieved with all the smaller clubs that he's gone to. QPR, I think he was on a hide into nothing anyway because of the way that club's run, but he was fantastic at Blackburn, fantastic at Fulham, and fantastic now at Stoke. And I think he likes to play football in a very direct, very 90s style of United, going for it. Quite a hard team. If you think of the quintessential Mark Hughes at United, for me, it was that double win in '94 side, and that is how I think he likes to play his football. I think that's evidenced by the way you got Stoke. They like to dribble, they like to fight, and they like to score goals. And I think he epitomises that with the side that he's bringing. I think tactically, he does come unstuck sometimes, and I think he's going to look to what everybody else has done at Old Trafford, and I think he's going to try and replicate that. I'm not sure Stoke have got that in their DNA to sit back like that, like they would have maybe done under Pulis or someone, and try and defend and just sort of shut out United. I don't think that's in them. I think they prefer more of a cut and thrust back and forward game. So I think if Manchester United can show the sort of risks that we've shown against Derby, and I think the sort of things that we did against Derby, which really impressed me, was players were committing defenders. We was running. We was coming and playing tight, one-touch football. And it didn't look at any points as static as it has now. People have mentioned it. Yes, it was Derby. But Derby will play a Premier League team in the very, very, very near future. So you've got to say they're probably on par with the likes of Norwich and Bournemouth, who have just turned us over. So, yes, it was only a Championship side, but they are going to be a Premier League side, mark my words. And they're in that bracket of similar sort of ability of side. So, if we can do it there, we just have to be able to start doing it at home, because teams don't come to Old Trafford to play football. They come to stifle, and they come for a 0-0 win, and they often get it. We saw Manchester City absolutely bottle it against us and come and try and get the 0-0, and that's what they got. And I think Stoke are going to try and do it, but I don't think they've got the personnel to do that. And I think if we just show, like Sweeney said, that risk and that just sheer bottle to just go for it in that final third, I think we can do it. Which leads me, a bit more smoothly this time, into your starting 11s. John, show me your starting 11.
I'm going for a 4-2-3-1. I got David De Gea in goal, same back four. Cameron Borthwick-Jackson on the left. Blind Smalling central defensive partnership. Varela, I think they should just walk right in there. The two holding midfielders, I have a really difficult situation here. I wanted to go for a 4-3-3 with Morgan Schneiderlin as the single pivot and have Basti and Mata or Basti and Herrera go forward. But I'm going to go for 4-2-3-1 with Morgan and Basti in that defensive midfield role with Martial, Mata, and Memphis. Triple M right down the middle with Waza up top.
Who did you have as your midfield too, then?
I'm having Morgan and Basti.
I picked the same team. I picked the exact
to be honest, do you know what?
Right.
There's no point. We could all probably predict Van Gaal's side. Okay, so I mean, and I'm not saying that's what you guys are doing. We could all probably do that. I still would like to see one at the back. I'd still rather see Schneiderlin be the one that's in, as you say, that one holding midfielder. And I personally would like to see Mata and Herrera both playing, not both playing number 10, but both playing just in front.
Invert the triangle.
Exactly, because Herrera for me is the guy that can do both. He can dip behind. He's a box-to-box player. He can ruffle feathers. I've said it in the past. I said it last year on a fan cam that I think Herrera, despite the fact, okay, size-wise, in terms of physical presence, he hasn't got that of a Vieira, of a Keane. But what he has got is the same qualities, and he gets in amongst it. And I think if you put him in that role where he can push forward when United are pushing forward, he can pull back when United are on the back foot alongside Schneiderlin. Get yourself two wide players, Memphis. Lingard, Martial maybe, and Memphis if you still want Waza as your number 10. I think it's as simple as that. I think if United start playing like that, show a little bit more ingenuity, I think we'll get results, to be honest. I think it's as simple as that.
I agree, and I agree big time on Herrera. I think he's got the tenacity. I think he's got the skill, at least, to play in that central midfielder role. And I think the reason I wanted him alongside Schneiderlin is because I know Van Gaal's always going to play for the two. And if you play Herrera there, in a similar way to Fellaini, he don't play there. He might line up there on the team sheet, but it's not where he plays his football.
Yeah.
However, saying that, I do think he is going to go with the two defensive, and I don't think Herrera's going to start. So I've gone with the same team. John's gone. John, how have you got the forward three lined up? Because I've got Marshall on the left, Mata in the middle, and Memphis on the right.
I have the same lineup.
Same one. All right, okay. So the reason I've gone for that is Martial coming in off the left. As much as I want to see him up front, you see him coming in from the left, and we saw it in the fan cams. People are saying, you know exactly what he's going to do, and he still manages to go and do it. That's because he's a very high-level player, and his close control is ridiculously good for someone his size. That's Messi sort of close control, where he's running at full pelt, and you know he's about to cut inside, and you know that he's about to do it, and he'll go in between two defenders like they're nothing, and it's incredible to see. And I want to see Memphis on the right-hand side, because I think one of the benefits that you've got of having Varela and Cameron Borthwick-Jackson as your fullbacks is they are left-footed and right-footed players playing on the correct side and not coming inside. So I want Martial on the left cutting in, and cutting in round the back, and I want to see Memphis on the right-hand side going round with his right foot, and then let's see what we can put into the middle, because I think that's where we've lacked it a little bit recently, where we've gone down and then we've paused and tried to cut back across the face of the box, and I think that's where everything gets slowed up. I think you're a much faster attacking side when you get to the byline and try and whip your crosses in, and I thought that was where we opened Derby up a little bit, and I think that we can do the same to Stoke.
Quick point, actually, just a very, very quick point. At the end of the game, Louis van Gaal was asked in a post-match interview what he was writing down in his notepad when United scored, and he was saying that he was writing down who assisted the goal. And I just look and I think you're right. Every single goal that we've scored, generally speaking, the majority of the goals we've scored are because balls have been whipped in and something has happened as a result. Apart from a couple of Wayne Rooney, wonder strikes, generally speaking, it's been balls coming in, something happening. And if he's writing that down, he needs to then remind his players that that's where and himself that's where the goal is going to come from. And I agree with you about Memphis completely, absolutely.
I'm not sure why he's writing that down. You can find that information out pretty much anywhere after the game. I don't think you need to be writing that down live. But anyway, real quickly, because we've waffled on for a long, long time. John, give me your score prediction for Stoke.
2-0, 1 goal from Basti and another from Martial.
Love it. Sweeney.
2-1. I'm not going to pick who's going to score, but it is going to be United to win.
And I'm going to say 2-1, and I hope Martial gets a goal because he deserves it after the derby performance. Anyway, thank you for watching. That was the preview. It gets chaotic, but that's what happens when they let me in charge. We are almost at 250,000 subscribers. That's all you lovely, lovely folk. So please help us get to 250,000. We're about 230 odd at the moment. Tell your gran, tell your postman, tell the people that you meet on the bus, tell everybody. Let's get us to 250,000 before the end of the season. Thanks for watching. See you soon.
Hello, welcome back guys. Squawker Dave back in the hot seat, and today we're having a manager debate. Everyone is for Louis van Gaal or against Louis van Gaal.